Sounded very good. So when I was a seminary student, one of the things that we were always encouraged to think about and to try was to try out just different spiritual practices, different ways of self-care, and just experiment a little bit with some of those things. And particularly for one of my professors was a military chaplain, and as I was preparing to do hospital chaplaincy, was really emphasized the importance of having some quick and easy spiritual practices that could be done in the hallway before going into a room to see a patient, or done in your car as you arrive for your shift, or after you leave before you go home. That spiritual practices didn't always have to be something that lasted a long time. They could be these short things that would just help us recenter and reground ourselves. And somewhere in there, one of the things I began playing with is carrying with me in my car a hymnal and just randomly opening it to a spot and reading one of our hymns as if it were a poem. And reading it out loud, there, and just taking time with the words and really letting them sink in and think about the meaning of that. And so I wanted to do that a little bit today with this beautiful hymn of "Wake Now My Senses," because sometimes when we're singing hymns, we're thinking about the tune and we don't necessarily have the words sink in, right? So wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being and all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now compassion. Give heed to the cry, voices of suffering that fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience, with justice thy guide, join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care. Sorry about that. That killed the mood. So, this wake now my senses, this reminder that our faith and our spirit is embodied. It's in who we are. It's in our whole person. It's in the fullness of who we are and the way that we experience the world. Wake now my senses, that reminder that each of us experience that differently. The way that we take things in through our senses is not identical to the person next to us. We're all processing things with our senses differently, the difference and diversity of how we experience that. Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Our connection, our oneness with the interconnected web of life, with the rest of nature. And when I hear those lines, I'm reminded of the indigenous author and scientist Robin Wall Kimmerer, who's a botanist who blends indigenous wisdom with science. And in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, asks the question, what is it that Earth asks of us? What is it that Earth asks of us? And she responds by saying that it's to receive the gifts of nature and to also give back to the land and give back to the earth, that reciprocity. To love the land and the earth and to be fully aware of nature loving us back. let's do that. Oh, here. Thank you. Plug your ears for just a moment while he's... Thank you, Alan, and thank you, tech team. So, again, I'm going to just back up just a little bit to Robin Wall Kimmerer, where she poses that question of what does the earth ask of us? And then responds by saying to receive the gifts of nature and to give back to the land and to give back to the earth. To love the earth and the land and to be fully aware of nature loving us back. Or as it says in this song, keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Oops. Whoa. This has been one of those days where many of the things that could go wrong. We've had lots of interesting things that came up this morning, including everything that I normally print out is sitting in my printer. But keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. So continuing with our hymn, that wake now my reason, wake now compassion, wake now my conscience, reason that reaches out to the new, that explores with others, that honors the wisdom that's gone before us. Reason has been honored and celebrated throughout the history of Unitarianism in its very roots. Beginning with William Ellery Channing, who was one of the foundational voices of Unitarianism in the United States, argued that reason is our primary tool for uncovering religious truth and for interpreting religious texts. And at the same time, he said and encouraged us to have an understanding and awareness of the limits of reason, to have some humility around that, the humility to recognize that sometimes we will reason erroneously, and to know that. Wake now compassion. Wake now my conscience. Give heed to the cry, voices of suffering. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. We're called in our faith to be in relationship. To be in relationship with one another and with those whose rights are denied. Not as charity, but as neighbor, as friend. In the words of the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. That we're called not to speak for others, but to speak alongside with others. To use our compassion and our conscience to join in collective liberation. The Aboriginal artist and activist Lila Watson has said it this way: if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Wake now my senses, my reason, my compassion, my conscience, brings us to the final verse. Wake now my ministry. Wake now my vision of ministry, Wake now my vision of ministry. Now the hymn's author, Reverend Dr. Thomas Michelson, who just passed away 4 years ago, first wrote this song as a gift for a friend's ordination into ministry. It was for the ordination of Reverend Charity Rowley as she was ordained as the Minister of Religious Education at the First Parish Unitarian Universalists in Arlington, Massachusetts. And I love that this song is in our hymnal, that we sing it together, that it's sung by all of us, because it's a reminder that each and all of us have our own calling. Each and all of us have our own ministry, and we have our shared ministry. That we might not all be called to seminary. We might not all choose ministry as a profession, but all of us, our life and our ministry is more than our work and more than our jobs. That we each and all have our ministry and we have our shared ministry based in the fullness of our whole selves. Our senses, our reason, our compassion, our conscience, our relationships with the earth, and with all our relations. As the Lakota people say, Matakia ayasin, all my relations. So I read the last verse one last time. Wake now my vision of ministry clear, brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share, work toward a planet transformed by our care. Transformed by our care. May it be so, and may we make it so. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be Mitakiyasin.